Thatcher Taylor here. I'm going to tell you how to get money out of your 401k or 403b before 59 and a half and avoid the 10% IRS penalty. Stay with me. Thatcher Taylor, welcome back to my classroom, the owner of ProPath Financial. With the rule of 55, you can take money out of 401ks and 403bs early before 59 and a half without incurring a 10% penalty. I'm going to tell you 9 steps or 9 things you need to know along the way if you plan on doing this. Number 1, the whole point of this is for a person that's thinking about retiring early and they're going to need to access retirement funds, and you can pull them out of your 401k or 403b without penalty before age 59 and a half. You still will have to potentially pay taxes on it, but you get to avoid the penalty here with the rule of 55. Number 2, this is not to be confused with separate and equal periodic payments. These are both under the tax code of 72T, but we're specifically talking about the rule of 55, not separate and equal periodic payments, SEPP, that a lot of people get confused. This is the rule of 55. Number 3, this is a big thing you need to know. This only applies to 401ks or 403bs or qualified plans like that. It does not apply to IRAs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, Roth IRAs, or anything of the kind. It applies to 401ks and 403bs, so start thinking about that. Here's the big one, number 4. You need to leave service on or after the age of 55. It cannot be before. So let me repeat that. On age 55 or later, you have to separate from your employer. So if you separate at 53, but you don't take a distribution until 55, doesn't count. You have to separate at 55 or later and take the distribution from the 401k or 403b after. Number 5, a little kicker, if you're a federal or state or like public employee, you potentially get the rule of 50. So you essentially could do the rule of 50 and you could leave that employer or retire early at age 50 and start taking distributions if you meet the requirements. But that's something you could check in on if you're younger and you work for a federal, state, or public type entity, maybe like a firefighter, police officer, military personnel, things like that. Number 6, all right, this might be the most complicated, but hang with me as I explain through this. This only works on your current 401k at your current employer. Once you separate from service, it doesn't matter if you do it on your own or if they fire you or if you're laid off, it only has to do with that 401k from the most recently separated from service after age 55. So again, let's create a scenario. You're 55, you work at an employer that has a 401k or a 403b, and you're like, I'm done, or they lay me off. At that point, you potentially could leave that job and access those 401k or 403b dollars without incurring a penalty, because that was the most recent and active employer that you separated from service on or after the age of 55. Remember that, it's on or after the age of 55. If you separated from an employer back at 52, 50, 49, 40, and you have old 401ks laying around from a previously separated service at an old employer, those do not count. The only way those would count is if you had taken those old 401ks and put them in your new currently active 401k, which can be done sometimes. Check with your plan. So if you're planning on doing this, you're thinking about doing this in the future, maybe you could access your old 401ks by adding them to the new plan and using the rule of 55. But if you take money out and you put them in IRAs, it does not count. So if you separate from service, you roll your money into an IRA, that's done. That is not irrevocable. You cannot put the money back once you separate from service. So the rule of 55 is gone. Number 7, just to hit this home, if you separate from service at age 55 and you take that money out and you roll it into an IRA, so you don't have to pay any taxes on it and you get the control of the funds, which isn't a terrible idea, just in general. But you thought, oh man, I want to do this, the rule of 55. Once it's in the IRA, it's done. You cannot go back. So I've kind of talked about this twice, but there's no redos. So this is why planning for the rule of 55 is extremely important. Number 8, I think I've mentioned this a couple times already, but let me just nail this one home as well. You cannot avoid paying taxes in doing this. So let's say you separate from service at 55. All right, we're good. You're going to pull money out of your 401k to live on, 50 grand. That 50 grand still goes on your income tax return as income, as a distribution from a retirement account. The only thing you get to avoid is that $50,000, that additional $5,000 or 10% penalty. That's the only thing you get to avoid. So the IRS rules of paying tax on tax deferred dollars is still going to come into play. Number 9, check the language in your plans. You need to make sure that the rule of 55 applies to your plans. In general, the IRS allows this, but you need to make sure your plan allows you to do this as well. So those are 9 things you need to be aware of if you're going to use the rule of 55. Let me know if you have any more questions.